Okay, good morning and welcome to the Environment and Climate Change Portfolio Decision Meeting, first virtual meeting of this portfolio. I'm Councillor Dave Ashmore, the Cabinet Member for Environment and Climate Change, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. We're meeting virtually in response to the limitations placed on governance by the COVID-19 pandemic. Until recently, the law stated that all members had to be present in the room to make formal decisions at meetings. However, the law has been amended in response to COVID, and councils are able to hold public meetings virtually. So this is in accordance with the Local Authorities Coronavirus Flexibility of Local Authority Meetings Regulations 2020, number 392, the regulations. Members of the public are invited to view this meeting, and there's been the opportunity for written representations to be submitted. Those present are requested to keep the microphones on mute and only turn them on when called to speak. Members are requested to keep their cameras turned on at all times. Officers are requested to turn their cameras on only when they are presenting their reports or answering questions. So if anyone would like to speak, please write your name and RTS for request to speak in the chat function. Please access chat from the horizontal menu bar. Right click to bring it up, not the icon on the left hand side. And each time you speak, please say who you are so it's clear who's speaking. So I'll now explain the running order for the meeting. After apologies for absence, members will declare any interest, then I'll receive the reports. So I'd like now to invite those present to introduce themselves. I'll read your names out. Can you reply by stating your name and saying present? I'll pause for a few seconds between calling each person. Those who are not able to confirm they are present will be recorded as absent. So can I ask everyone taking part to confirm they are present? First of all, I'll ask if there's been any apologies. To Jane, have there been any apologies? Things being shared. We have no apologies then?
No apologies for absence.
Okay. I can't see anyone else. I'll read out the names just in case people are on there and I can't see them. So Councillor Robert New present or absent? I don't think he's on here. Councillor George Fielding present or absent? Can't see them on there. So officers expected. Richard Lee.
Good morning, Councillor Ashmore, present.
Thank you. And Jane Didino, Local Democracy Officer.
Yes, I'm here.
You're there. And you said you've had no apologies for absence?
None at all.
Okay, so declarations of interest, that'll be me, and I do not. So we've got the one agenda of the annual status report for the air quality there. And have we received any written deputations?
No, Chair, we haven't.
Okay. So now I think we just go straight into the agenda then. If I might ask Richard to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Councillor Ashmore. As you correctly say, the report is the assessment of air quality and the annual status report for 2020. If I may share the report with you on the screen, bear with me, it might take a second or two to load up. Can you confirm with me what you can see?
I can see the front page of it.
You can see the front page?
Yep.
Okay. And if I move the document, does the document move on your screen?
Yes, it does. Yeah, up and down.
Good.
And it's
Okay.
large now as well.
Thank you very much. Excellent. The purpose of the report is clearly set out in section 1, and there are two main purposes. The first is to confirm that Portsmouth City Council has a responsibility to review and assess air quality, and that this report concentrates on the data that has been compiled during the period of calendar year 2019. It is worth saying that although the report is highlighted as it is the 2020 report, it does only report on the calendar year data for 2019, and it briefly goes into some detail with regards to the measures and actions Portsmouth City Council have taken to impact upon the pollution levels during the same calendar year 2019. The recommendations are set out within section 2. Effectively, they are that the Cabinet member acknowledges the narrative in respect to the pollution data set that has been presented within this document, and approves the data for inclusion within the forthcoming annual status report that will be submitted to the government. There is an obligation that we do this every year, and although the annual status report has not been finalised, we will be submitting a report to the government, hopefully in the very near future, and I would suggest that the timeline for that is approximately 8 weeks. Section 3 sets out the submission deadlines, and it does notify the Cabinet member that there has been a delay in publishing the formal annual status report, and this is as a result of the impact of COVID upon the regulatory services team. However, as I say, we will be pulling the formal document together within the next 8 weeks or so. A reminder, of course, that it is the data for the 2019 calendar period. And as I say, that there has been an impact of COVID. And of course, the COVID pandemic started in March 2020. So it's worth noting again that the data set has no relevance to any reductions in traffic levels that may have occurred during the pandemic. Section 4 sets out the reasons and the need for action. I don't propose to go through all of this information. This is a reiteration of the importance of tackling air quality in terms of the impact upon public health and the cost in terms of the effects upon the National Health Service. There are 2 main pollutants of interest in Portsmouth, and these are nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter, and sections 5 and section 6 set out the reasons for monitoring those pollutants in Portsmouth. The reasons for the recommendations are highlighted in section 7. It's a reiteration that this is a statutory function as required by the Environment Act 1995, and that we have obligations to meet the government's requirements with regard to several ministerial directions which have been imposed upon Portsmouth City Council to take action to resolve the non-compliances with the national air quality objectives and to ensure that we achieve compliance within the shortest possible time frame. Section 7.3 reiterates previous information provided that there has been a focus in recent years upon levels of pollution which are exhibited on the road and curbside rather than at sensitive receptors. Traditionally, sensitive receptors were the key focus of monitoring data, and these are homes, schools, hospitals, i.e. where people are and can't avoid being, whereas on the curbside and roadside, people are there for a short period of time, such as walking along the pavement or cycling along the curbside. In terms of the ministerial directions, 7.5 sets out where the main areas of concern were, and these are Queen Street and Anglesey Road and the junction and intersection of Alfred Road and Mile End Road. These were the areas where there aren't sensitive receptors, aren't high numbers of sensitive receptors, but as a result of the increasing interest from the government, we increased the number of monitoring stations that we have in those areas, both in 2018 and 2019, and these will be reported in this report and of course within the forthcoming ASR. 7.6 just reiterates the importance of complying with the ministerial directions. It is important that we do focus upon some of the actions taken in 2019 to improve air quality. And Of course, Portsmouth City Council has undertaken significant steps to comply with the government's requirements in this regard, and we are in very close contact with DEFRA, that's the government agent, and their team, the Joint Air Quality Unit within DEFRA, with regards to that ministerial direction and how we as a local authority are taking measures to address the exceedances of the national air quality objectives in terms of nitrogen dioxide. And they are set out within the bullet points in 8.1. We have taken steps during the calendar year 2019. I won't go through them all, but one of the most useful to highlight is the bus retrofit program. And this was a program to ensure the abatement technology of buses was improved. And I have highlighted the fact that there are 105 buses that underwent this process of retrofitting, and several of those buses, and I believe the percentage was about 70%, was actually completed within the calendar year 2019, and therefore may have had an impact upon the level of nitrogen dioxide along those bus routes. 105 buses, and I have highlighted the fact that they are all due for completion of that program by this month of this year. So the data is the key area which the ASR will cover, and section 9 sets out a summary of the levels of nitrogen dioxide in Portsmouth during the calendar year 2019. Section 9.2 sets out and explains that we have 154 monitoring locations for nitrogen dioxide as part of the nitrogen dioxide diffusion tube network. And I have broken these down. 27 of these sites are what we call long-term monitoring sites. So these are sites where we have 5 years of data and more. 78 sites were installed during the period 2017-2018, and 43 sites were were installed during the 2019 period. For those of you who are sharp, if you add those up, it does not make 154. We have co-location sites which are attached to the continuous monitoring sites just to ensure that the tubes are working as they should and to validate the data set. So when we look at the 2019 data set from the diffusion tubes and compare it with the levels of nitrogen dioxide in 2018, the survey concluded that nitrogen dioxide annual mean levels were in excess of the annual mean national air quality objective at 4 locations in 2019 compared to 13 locations in 2018. And these 4 exceedances occurred at the TAP Public House in London Road and 3 locations along Alfred Road. When we look at the data set for 2019 in comparison with 2018, the annual mean levels decreased at all of the 27 long-term monitoring locations. The level of improvement is higher than that registered in 2018, where the diffusion tubes annual mean levels decreased at 53.57% of the monitoring locations when compared with 2017. The 2019 diffusion tube annual mean levels exceeded the national air quality objective at only 1 of the 27 monitoring locations, and that was at the TAP Public House. Assessment of the 104 monitoring locations, which were presented in both 2019 and 2018/17, demonstrated that 99 locations exhibited reductions in the nitrogen dioxide annual mean levels, with the remaining 5 locations exhibiting an increase in levels. Of the 78 diffusion tube locations set up in 2017/18, comparison with the 2019 dataset revealed that exceedances of the nitrogen dioxide annual mean levels occurred at 3 locations along Alfred Road for the 2nd year in a row. And I've highlighted those in the bullets immediately below section 9.6. When you look at the data, Alfred Road, those of you who know it, is a relatively short stretch of road, and you can see that the annual mean levels which have been highlighted range from around 46 to around 53, which is a fairly large range. It's worth noting that the column 12 result of 52.52 was of a limited data set, although we try and ensure our tubes remain at the locations. Clearly, when we come to replace those tubes, which is approximately every 30 days, if they are not there, we cannot make an analysis of that tube and that month, and therefore that may affect the annual average. And those of you who know column 12, which I suspect are very few, that lamppost is located close to a crossing zone, so it is where there is start-stop traffic, and that may account also for the reason why that level is higher than the other two locations in Alfred Road. We also installed a number of diffusion tubes in 2019 in other areas where there are not sensitive receptors, but where the DEFRA modelled information suggested that there were exceedances of the National Air Quality Objective. And you'll see there, there are a number of locations listed. And if we look at Eastern Road, for example, you can see that the levels are in exceedance of the National Air Quality Objective. Again, all these are sort of lamppost locations, very close to the roadside. So perhaps we would expect an increased level of nitrogen dioxide at the roadside rather than several meters back from the roadside where we might have residential accommodation. All of the locations which have an exceedance are listed within this data set. We also, as I've previously mentioned, we have 5 continuous air quality monitoring stations. This data set is probably more reliable than the diffusion tubes in that this is continuous monitoring data from very sophisticated pieces of equipment. And I have identified in section 9.9 all of the locations and all of the levels. However, in 2019, the maximum concentration for nitrogen dioxide from our continuous monitoring station in London Road was the only location that exceeded the National Air Quality Objective. It exceeded it only just. As I say, I've listed that in 9.8, which is 40.46, which I would say equates to a continued breach of the National Air Quality Objective. However, technically, the objective standard is 40.5. So it's a very marginal narrative around exceedance or compliance with the objective in that location. 9.9, as I say, goes through each of the continuous stations. Gatcombe Park is a background location in a playing field of a school, and therefore the levels of nitrogen dioxide picked up by that location are expected to be low. And of course they are low, 17.47, when compared with the objective standard of 40. Burfield Road is at a junction of Burfield Road and Copner Road, and you'll see there that the level of nitrogen dioxide on the annual average has been recorded at 31. Mile End Road, right at the bottom of Mile End Road, close to the roundabout, you'll see the level there is 32.44. And when we look at Anglesey Road, this is a continuous monitoring station that was installed by DEFRA. And DEFRA chose this location because it considered it to be one of the worst polluted areas in the city, very close to the areas which were modelled by DEFRA in terms of the ministerial directions, for example, Alfred Road. But you'll see there that the level of nitrogen dioxide recorded is 27.80. So well below the objective standard of 40. Section 10 sets out the particulate monitoring data for Portsmouth. It's worth noting, of course, that we monitor both PM10 and PM2.5 in a number of locations. I won't go through all the levels, but it is fair to say that all of the monitoring devices are below record levels, below the National Air Quality Objective. Section 11 highlights or provides an update on the clean air zone proposals. It's worth adding this information, although this is taking place now. Of course, it is of significant importance that we mention the consultation, which is now live, in relation to the measures which are required to reduce the level of pollutants to below the National Air Quality Objectives, and we have to predict what class of clean air zone might achieve that reduction. And you'll see that in section 11.6 that the consultation seeks views on a class B clean air zone, which focuses upon buses, coaches, taxis, private hire vehicles and heavy goods vehicles. Although the consultation, those of you who have looked at it, we are very interested in hearing all your views in respect to this type of clean air zone and the need for a clean air zone in Portsmouth. Section 12, what I've tried to do is to highlight some conclusions of all the data sets that have been recorded over 2019 and to summarize some of the main areas which I've done in the bullet points. And I think it's very important to confirm that nitrogen dioxide levels in Portsmouth remain a significant concern. And whilst we are delivering our objectives to achieve compliance through the delivery of the ministerial directions, Portsmouth City Council thereafter will aim to further reduce the harmful effects of pollution, and that reducing not only in compliance but thereafter remains a key priority for Portsmouth City Council. I think the data that I've gone through and the comparisons with previous years, and we've been collecting this data in some locations, as I say, for well in exceedance of 5 years, but even the most recent data sets over the 2017 to 2019 period represents a improvement in the level of nitrogen dioxide which is being recorded in Portsmouth. Of course, data is very important, both to monitor if we do put in a clean air zone. It's very important that we monitor the impact of those measures and all the other measures that we're putting in play to reduce the level of nitrogen dioxides. And because data is so important, we will be continuing to increase our monitoring network, and that I presented a paper in January of this year which talked about new continuous monitoring stations within the ministerial direction area, and we have purchased some intermediate monitoring equipment which will be able to provide more accurate or more reliable data than the diffusion tubes, and we'll be deploying these devices during the latter part of this year and early into next year. Of course, Portsmouth City Council continues to work extremely closely with DEFRA and their Joint Air Quality Unit, and we will continue to do this through the next 12 months and I'm sure beyond. What I've tried to do is to summarize the results of the 2019 data set in table 1. I won't run through them all with you, but you will see in the column on the right hand side that I've tried to provide a narrative as to whether the data represents an improvement in nitrogen dioxide levels. And you can see hopefully that there are a significant number of yeses, demonstrating that there is an improvement in when we look at the combined data sets. It is worth noting that when we are looking at this area here, you may be able to see it with my cursor, that there are still some upward trends. But if I focus upon London Road, I did read out that data by the London Road, and it was just marginally above the compliance standard. There has been a downward trend when in comparison with 2018. However, the trend over the 5-year period is upward. Of course, there is an integrated impact assessment, and I guess it's worth highlighting the importance of air quality in terms of everything that Portsmouth City Council does. So if you go through that assessment, you will see that the report demonstrates that air quality is key to almost everything that we do here in Portsmouth City Council, and highlights the importance of reducing pollutant levels wherever we possibly can. That provides a summary of the report. I'll go back to the recommendations, and the recommendation is, of course, that there is acknowledgement of the data set, and I hope that the Cabinet member may approve the data for inclusion within the forthcoming annual status report to the government, as I say, hopefully within the next 8 weeks. I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Ashmore. Councillor Ashmore, your microphone's on mute. I don't know if you were speaking there.
I was. Thanks for that prompt. Otherwise,
No
I've
problem.
gone on for ages. No, I was just about to say, usually this would be the time when I ask other people if they've got any questions or comments. But unless I can't see them on the screen, I don't think that anyone's arrived.
They're not
yet.
there. I've checked the participants list.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, in that case, then let me just say thank you, Richard, for that report, and thank you for the whole team. Actually, you know, air quality's been something, like you say, it's been the priority, and it's good to see all the stats that you've provided there. You know, and an explanation of them. I think it's fair to say that although we're on the right, and let me get the word right, trajectory to cleaner air, to better air on there. It's a matter of the fact it's taken a while to get there, but we've put the other things, you know, we're doing things around the city, and there are other things in there, as you've mentioned, the improvements to cycling infrastructure, the bus retrofitting, etc., and the school programs, and there's more to come. I know with the Pompey Street space petition that was discussed at